Today's guest panelist is Leslye Sanguino, CITP, and we will hear from her shortly. So I do invite everyone to drop your questions in the Q&A box throughout this 30-minute session, and we will answer them at the end. And feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourself, perhaps tell us a bit about your current role and the organization you represent. Before we get started, we acknowledge and give thanks for the opportunity to join you today from the unceded territory and homeland of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Wherever you are, please take a moment to recognize and respect the ancestral custodians, nations, and peoples who lived on these lands long before any settler, each with their own unique culture, language, and history. So I am going to share my presentation. Just bear with me.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Leslye, hello, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why it was just loading and loading. I had to click a bunch of things. My initial meeting didn't have the link, so that is weird.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, but thank you, Leslye, for joining us. So what we're going to do, because it's a half an hour, I'm just going to go over just briefly a little bit about what FITT's corporate solutions are and why, why is this important? Why are we doing this information session today? So I'm going to get started, and then I will pass the discussion over to the two of us, Leslye, so that we can dive a little bit deeper on the value of FITTskills training for organizations such as yours. So just bear with me. I promise everyone I will be brief.
Okay, so I will not have my camera then while you do your presentation, and then I will activate my camera. How would that work?
Sure, it's up to you. If you want to close your camera, and then you can relax, and then I'm going to call on you, so don't go far, and then we're going to dive deeper.
Okay, sounds good.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslye.
Thank you.
So some of the content from today is taken from our FITTskills training. We're going to go over a little bit about FITTskills training, corporate solutions, current state, where I see, and this is my own take, you won't find this in the textbook, but where I see organizations are lacking, maybe lacking in that trade expertise to enable them to explore new opportunities, to navigate the trade complexities, to comply with regulations, et cetera. It's about being prepared. I'll share with you a tool today that you can take with you and really, truly ask those hard questions within your organization. And then, the main draw is the panel discussion with Leslye. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, basically 1 to 5 in the next 10 minutes. So bit of a whirlwind. But here we go. So we may or may not know that growing global it requires a unique skill set. International trade is a unique skill set. Understanding the complexities, there are different complexities that need to be understood and managed in order to succeed in international markets. So building that crucial international trade expertise within organizations will help organizations grow. And without that trade expertise, often it leads organizations to make very costly mistakes. So our FITTskills training is global in scope, so it doesn't matter where an organization is or where they're looking to export to. The FITTskills training is about being strategic and understanding what's involved in international trade. And I know it sounds very cliche, but our FITTskills training is created by business for business. So it is backed by business standards. So our corporate solutions, we realize that there is a need to build expertise within organizations, because trade doesn't happen between nations, it happens between individuals, but it happens between those individuals that are prepared to understand what's involved in getting products or services into that market. So Our corporate solutions are aimed at building capacity within organizations, and helping with organizations perhaps with employee retention and upskilling the team. So we can create cost-effective upskilling programs and cost-effective professional development for an organization. I often say, why recreate the wheel? If you're trying to help your organization, if you're trying to onboard new employees, why would you create a whole program when FITT has that international, globally renowned international business program that's available for you to use to upskill or onboard the team? So these are our 6 courses. This is our international business program. I often say, starts with feasibility of international trade. We highly recommend that organizations start with that, because that truly enables an organization to assess, one, if they're really ready to grow global, to export into new international markets, and 2, whether or not it's feasible to enter into that market. So we look at everything from feasibility of international trade through to market entry, sales and marketing, finance, and global value chain. We have credentials. So completion of 3 courses gives an individual a FITT certificate in international trade. All 6 courses is the FITT diploma in international trade. With the FITT diploma, an individual can, and 3 years of international trade experience, an individual can apply for the professional designation, which is the CITP, or Certified International Trade Professional. These are some of the main benefits, according to CITPs, of becoming certified. And Leslye is a CITP, as I mentioned myself as well. I'm a CITP, but these are some of the benefits, just that credibility, just the it's a valuable career asset. It's good for the organization, and it's good for your employees. What FITT's corporate solutions are is basically a customized package that fit the needs of any organization. Starts at 10 courses. We would provide the organization with redemption codes. So 1 code is equivalent to 1 seat in a course. Our courses are online, so individuals or entire teams can go through the training. It's self-directed, so if these courses, these redemption codes are distributed to various individuals in different departments, it's self-directed. They can start the course whenever they'd like, or in some cases, if you've onboarded a complete, like some new hires, and you want them all to start, so as a team to start the onboarding, and then you could choose to, that they all start at the same time, but it's very flexible. Once an individual has started a course, they have 3 months to complete it. And there's opportunity for anyone taking the courses to earn those credentials that I mentioned. Each course also has a certificate of completion. So these are the steps. It would be the difference between getting the courses online. You can purchase FITT's online training through our basket on fittfortrade.com. But the difference with corporate solutions is that we would draw up a purchase agreement for you, and then we would provide you with those, distribute the codes, or we would provide you with the redemption, with the redemption codes, and then you would distribute them to your team. So here are some of the, how you would leverage that training for your organization and help with risk management to minimize costly errors by understanding, all the regulations, compliance, and I know we might dive into that with Leslye, and the many risks that are involved. And I'm going to use a little bit of a case study today to emphasize this. Also, it can help, you can help leverage these trade expertise by expanding, discovering new markets, new opportunities to create more efficiencies within your operations, create that competitive advantage, create stronger partnerships that you will have for the long term, and grow your revenue, because we know that trade expertise can lead to better opportunities, maximizing profitability for the long run. So a little bit of a case study, as I mentioned, there is an Alberta company, they're still in business, Red Deer Alberta company, who basically didn't have the trade expertise on within their organization. They fielded a call that just came to their company, a small company, and this company wanted to buy O-rings, and they didn't know what they didn't know, and they didn't have those internal controls, and didn't realize, and the company was the export shipment was to Iran, and didn't realize that there were sanctions. So basically, the company was fined $90,000. I have a cost breakdown here. I have no idea what legal fees were or the cost of the lost time. It potentially could have bankrupted the company, but I am happy to say that the company is still in business. But one of the big costs, though, is that reputational cost. And for a small company, building back up your reputation, because of course it was all over the news, building back up the reputation, which they did, because they are still in business, but those are a lot of costs. So an investment in even our basic course, the feasibility of international trade, which lays out the whole trade landscape, talks about some of those compliance issues. And when looking at new international markets, understanding that, yes, because someone might want to order from you, can you actually export to that country? So with a basic understanding of regulations, they would have realized that, no, this is not something that we should or can engage in. So just a brief little case study emphasizing my point about having that trade expertise in order to mitigate the risk. All right, so where I see the current state right now is there's lots of complexities in the market today. Leslye hopefully will get into some of the complexities that she navigates on the daily. But there are also opportunities. So I see the major challenges is that organizations don't have that human resource capacity, don't have those individuals with expertise on staff where they can handle some of these complexities and look full picture of what the current landscape means to them. Where are we going to look to diversify our exports? How are we going to navigate some of this in the short term and do some strategic long-term thinking? So, often the major challenges is that they don't put in that, that research, do their due diligence. They're very comfortable in maintaining the status quo. Foreign markets are daunting. The diverse cultures, ways of doing business is very daunting. So often there's paralysis about starting. But having someone on staff that can help you break it down and just say, we start with this. This is step one, and this is step two, and then maybe in 6 months we're going to be here. So having somebody goes back to the capacity and building those skills in staff. One last thing, one challenge is that your export plan. Sometimes companies create it and they're one and done. They just create that export plan, not realizing that it's a living, breathing document that needs to be evaluated and updated. So those are some of the challenges. Here is the tool that I said I would leave you with. And this is an internal checklist. This is not it's not absolutely everything, but it gets organizations to start looking at those internal risks. Those are those non-technical and generally controllable risks. So I'm not going to read all of this. I will leave it. You'll receive a copy of this presentation, which includes this checklist. And it's really something that your organization needs to go through to ask those tough questions. And do you, are these risks that you currently are experiencing, and how are you going to overcome these risks? So one way to overcome the risks is, as I mentioned, um, just having the expertise on staff. So this is where I would like to bring in Leslye. So I'm going to read your bio, if you'll allow me.
Sure.
I'm going to pull it up. So Leslye is the Customs and Trade Compliance Manager at Finning International, the world's largest Caterpillar dealer. With over 15 years of experience in international trade, she has held key roles across public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including positions at CVSA and Livingston International. She holds several professional designations, including the Certified International Trade Professional Designation, CITP, by FITT, the Certified Customs Specialist, CCS, and Master of Export Specialist, MES. A recognized leader in trade compliance education, Leslye has developed and led numerous workshops, courses, and seminars. She's also very active in various mentoring and professional development initiatives, and she supports emerging talent in international business and trade compliance, and that is why she has given up her time to join us today. Leslye, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Laura. Appreciate it.
So why don't I read your bio, but can you just tell us in your own words, like a little bit of your career trajectory and why and how you heard about FITT in the first place and how that fit, no pun intended, fit into your career path?
Yeah, so I started very early in my career. My very first job was actually selling medical equipment to South America. They have a private health sector there, and so lots of little privately owned clinics. And so we were providing medical equipment from Korea and Spain to South America. So at the same time, I was going to university, and two of my mentors kind of like motivated me to take the FITT courses. FITT was part of the curriculum at university, and I was really enjoying the courses. So, you know, when you're in university and every professor tries to kind of lean you to their field, and so Frank and Halia were very successful. And I really like what they were doing, all of the cases in FIT. And so, yeah, so I enjoyed the courses. I kept on taking them and finally got my designation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, so how do you see so like do you think that FITTskills training and the CITP and all that trade expertise, do you think it brings value like in your current role?
It certainly, one of the things that I noticed is that I was exposed to international trade very early in my career, thanks to FIT, right? So I was developing this awareness, and the way that you think, thinking about marketing, thinking about contracts, what kind of language you needed to have in your contracts, like what were you going to do if you were going to export, where the resources that you were going to go and be able to access, you know, from what were the requirements, just understanding different cultures, understanding different governments. I think that in Canada, and I think right now it's a huge proof, a lot of Canadian business are just used to do business with the US because it's close, it's familiar, it's comforting, right? And yeah, they have done it forever. And so I had a particularly different experience because since the beginning, because I like that and I pursued that trajectory. I went to work with Motorola and I worked with Livingston, I worked with CBSA, and so I started seeing international trade beyond the US, right? Seeing other countries, seeing, you know, dealing with the challenges, dealing with sales that we had never done and that they were just made because they were clients of ours for the longest of time, but we had never entered that market. Like one of in my FIT course for the expert, I give one of the examples. going into the Canary Islands. We assumed that the Canary Islands was part of Spain, and then Spain was part of Europe, and we were all set. And it was a completely different story. We were not set up. We couldn't import. We didn't have the tax ID. It was a different tax system, and all those kind of things. So certainly that brings that awareness. I know that the FITTskills are more in I'll say in a management risk assessment analysis view, where you can see everything as a whole. So you're not doing the technical stuff. You're just seeing, okay, this is what it will be if you're expanding, or if you had already expanded and you want to go into the next market, these will be the next steps, because you cannot assume that it will be the same.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I just think that it's you're able then to connect the dots, and you're able to run those lists through your head, like things that it may not be, would not have crossed other people's minds about, beyond those compliance issues, but it's about, connecting the dots and those cultures, and being able to ask those questions, or we need to investigate this, or we, having that global mindset, I think. What's interesting, Leslye, is that I'm just curious, when did you become a CITP before you became a CES, like the customs specialist?
Yes, my first designation was CITP FIBP, and then I went to the CCS, so Custom Specialist,
Right.
and then my latest one was Master of Export Specialist.
Right, right. But I guess the CITP just laid out that, that whole landscape, and then you were able to specialize in the different areas.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So part of my CITP courses were part of my general management international business at a university, and it covered the whole perspective of management. And reality is that a lot of small businesses need people that have this kind of skills to expand to a new market, right? It's not the same. We're seeing it today again, and I'm going back to that current situation. Canada was so used to doing business in the US that some businesses weren't even aware. When I say we, as Canada as a whole, they didn't have to deal with tariffs. They didn't have to deal with what a harmonized system code was, what a duty was. They were just crossing border. Most of the goods were free. And then all of the sudden, all of this Pandora box opened this year, and everybody was running. It's like, what? It's a free trade agreement. What do you mean? I thought it was USMCA. No, we have many more. You can expand to other places. What? It's a harmonized tariff system. How does it work? And sometimes they think that it's a magical hat that you can just go and change things, and they magically fix, right? And how will this impact? And all of a sudden, you need to calculate duties into Canada. You need to calculate duties into the US, and you start seeing, okay, do they have the powers? What's the next step? We're going through appeals and all of that. You kind of get an awareness through FITT, right? Just Absolutely. So that you know what are the next steps through the cases. I would say most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know when I worked for a small manufacturer, and when I first started, and I was hired as an export manager because of the CITP designation, when I went into the organization, I just started asking so many questions, like, and I'm not a customs specialist, but I was looking at, their commercial invoices and how they were classifying the product. And country of origin, and even the HS code, and I'm like, but why? And they're like, why are you asking? This is what's always been done. And I was like, I had all these red flags going up, and I thought, well, you realize like, just because it's been done like this, have you properly assessed, like, if this is truly, the country of origin? And it can get very complicated very quickly. So
yeah. I should say, when I was a business advisor, I saw this a lot, where you had salespeople doing international sales, but sometimes they weren't even aware that that was an international sale. So I had questions like, I'm sending from Alaska to Canada. Well, Canada, has these tariffs right now. And they're like, well, how about if I send it to another state in the US and then to Canada? it's the same thing. It's international trade, right? Well, I haven't had to deal with this before. You were lucky, right? Because yes, you were making a sale. Again, we're just right across the border. People were doing it forever. They didn't think, this is international trade. And then, as you saw in your example, people call, they place an order, and they're like, well, if I can sell it here, why cannot I sell it somewhere else? It's just a $30 bag of rings, right? Well, if you're not aware of it, what if it's not your day to day, you sell this every day, but you're not aware of sanctions and embargoes or import controls or paperwork. I have had in the past machinery arrived at a destination in Kuwait, and it's like, well, you didn't inspect it before coming to Kuwait. We didn't know we needed to inspect it, right? And so, yeah, those are the challenges that I see, and that's where the FITT awareness will bring that knowledge, or at least trigger those questions that you were referring to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just think that having someone or having a team or having individuals who they might not know the answers, but they'll know enough that we need to escalate this, or we need to reach out to a customs specialist, or we should reach out to the customs authority. We might want to have a ruling on this. Like, you might not know all the answers, but at least some of those risks and those red flags that could save the company, the organization, a lot of money, right? And just understanding, I often think like the answering those inquiries that land in your inbox, and to a new country where you don't know the landed costs, and you accept, you sell it on an Incoterm that you've used for another, like a neighboring market, which is fine for the neighboring market, but then you use the same Incoterm and you don't understand your obligations into that country. And at the end of the day, I've seen companies that actually don't make a profit because they underestimated the cost, and they've accepted an Incoterm where they were responsible, say, for the shipping, the insurance, or offloading or clearing through customs, that at the end of the day, no profit to
Yeah.
be made. So really, was it an export? Was it worth it? So
Yeah, and sometimes it goes more complex than that. If you believe that you can just deliver duty paid and clear customs just because you have done it, there are some countries that do not allow you, unless you're a citizen,
right.
to clear customs. And so now all of a sudden you just have the goods there. Do you destroy the goods? Do you just, you're losing the goods? Do you ask them to return it to you? Is it more expensive? Yeah, those kind of things that you had to kind of like bring it into the conversation, because it's not the day to day to people. And even though, quote unquote, international trade has been happening, because it's been outside of Canada, it has been in a very friendly manner, without, wanting to minimize us exporting to the US, but it has been a very, very easy experience compared to other places.
Right. Fantastic. I don't see any questions that have come in, but maybe I would ask you, what would you recommend for organizations who don't have a CITP on their staff, or don't have anybody that's gone through FITTskills training or specific training in international trade? What would you recommend to them? And how do you see, do you see the value in international business training for organizations?
Yeah, I'm always an advocate for training, specifically because what we do changes all the time. And also because it's very complex. Not one thing is the same. Not every country is the same. You cannot just copy paste the same, business plan that you have from one place to the other. So I think investing in your employees, investing in yourself, in the knowledge, that's going to pay off. When you start calculating, if you get into an audit, that can, they can go back retroactively 4 years. You're supposed to save your paperwork for 6 years. And if you get into an audit, the amount of effort, cost, external costs that you're going to have to assume, penalties, interest going retroactively that you may have to pay, that by itself, it's already, much more than giving this training to people. So the international trade aspect, specifically in the last 10 years, has been changing a lot. It has been increasing. We see more diversity. We see more anti-dumping cases. We see different types of tariffs and different types of restrictions, environmental restrictions. So it's like not just crossing the border, paying duties, and that's it. It's all of the other government organizations around the world that will be dealing with your goods. And having that awareness, you can never know it all, but just having someone that is actively thinking about risk mitigation can help out a lot. So being with reputation, as you were saying before, the cost, the time, even the fact that you're going to have to now maybe release a lot of your information to customs authorities, maybe losing a big client over this, or it's not going to be profitable anymore to start exporting, right? Or not having done that due diligence in advance may mean that you have to step out of that market because it wasn't what you thought. The product wasn't what you thought. There wasn't a liking to that product. You didn't have that requirements. Having the goods at customs for like weeks or months, it's not going to help you out. And so it's that awareness, right? It's not something that you can just do a 1 hour webinar and boom,
That's
you
right.
get it. It's by itself a field that companies are now realizing that it exists. By itself, you had to learn valuation, classification, different requirements, PGAs, all of those different things. That's not learned just, on the go or in a 1 hour or, on your research. There's so much more. And as you said, why reinvent the wheel? There has been professionals that have put together this kind of training, and they have a lot of examples that will let you visualize what is it that you may encounter. And at sometimes it may let you visualize what is it that you're doing wrong that you haven't realized that you're doing wrong. And so that will be your trigger point to say, well, let's see how we can do this better. So at the end of the day, customs authorizations are looking for you to do due diligence and to do your best. A lot of things are left for interpretation when it comes to classifications, but at the end of the day, you do have to do your due diligence. You do have to do your best. You cannot just go and say, well, I didn't know. Well, it was your responsibility to know. You decided to engage in international business, and therefore you should have known, right? If you're building a machine as an engineer, you can just say, well, I didn't know that it has to have, the safety requirements, and so therefore they're obligated to do that. And so a lot of the people don't think about this field in that way. It's just something that happens. It's just, you're expanding, you're selling to a new market. They see the revenue, they don't see the risk.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as I mentioned, like ignorance is not bliss. Like, and you can't like, I didn't know, as you said, is not a valid excuse, right? But we have a question here. How can how can a trade professional shift from being a technical expert to becoming a trusted strategic advisor within the business? Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Did you want to take that one first?
Sure. So I think it takes a lot of time, preparation, awareness, doing your own research. I think that in my case, how I did that shift was researching, reading a lot, asking questions, going to webinars, going to seminars. Like I have tried to expose myself as much as possible to the bigger questions that may happen. When you're in the operational, the technical side of things, you do the day to day. You do the one thing that crosses, the one thing that is going to trigger. But when you start looking at the organization as a whole, okay, and you take time to start thinking, okay, what else should we concentrate on? What else should we improve? What is it that I'm missing here? Prepare for something that hasn't happened and start telling people, I learned this in my training. Is this something that we're doing? Is this something, how do we escalate it? In my case, we have one company, one mother company, and then we have other companies, other subsidiaries, different legal entities. Once I learn something that happened to the main one, how do I do the due diligence to see, if this is happening to the other ones, or how can I pass these contract clauses, and who do I need to contact? Who are the owners of this information? Maybe multiple cases, multiple departments. Sometimes it's procurement, sometimes are just planning, sometimes it's the buying, sometimes it's just the servicing stuff because it's just service related. So I think it's just thinking more global rather than in the day to day. And you will have to see if you had the time, because obviously the day to day, the operations, it's very very busy, right? Most companies are very busy, and you do need a person that has the technical expertise for the day to day, but it's just creating that strategic awareness and looking at different sides of the business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That it's a great question. I would maybe flip this question around too. So I think the foundation and what an international trade expert, or those that have gone through some of the training and understand the complexities and how to navigate and the risks involved. I think it's that evaluation of opportunity and the risks involved that can be transferred from one industry and one technical, I guess, the industry into another. So whether it's products or services. So I know when I started working for that manufacturer, and it was in the electrical metering space, I knew nothing about, still don't really understand how electricity works, but I understood enough that I was able to work across departments and say, okay, if we'd like to expand, because our number one customer and about 80-90% of our business was in one market. And I thought, if that customer then changes suppliers, we've got a real issue. So I was able to identify that we need to expand into different markets. But in order to do so, I had to work across departments. I had to work with production, operations. I had to work with finance and get them to understand, okay, this is a strategic shift that needs to happen, and we need to evaluate this and this and this and truly find the market with the most potential. But I had no technical knowledge of the metering industry, like none whatsoever. But I knew enough about the business model to understand, and our products to understand, and started to research where we had the most potential. So flipping that question around, it's about, if you've got that technical experience and that technical expertise, but then you've also got that strategic, global expansion, where do our opportunities lie and what do we need to do? I think it's tremendous benefit to any organization really to develop, because a lot of companies are just, they're just, there's that inertia there, and there's the risk of not doing anything. And so if 2025 has taught us anything, we do have to look to the future and start looking at different markets. For many companies, they have to start looking at different customers in markets outside of North America, for example. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think we got another really good question here. Could you provide some examples of how companies implement internal auditing practices for tariff classification?
Yeah, so there are various ways. Some companies, and I should say this, I've been in companies when I have been a one-person show, and companies where I have a team of 5 people, and so it all depends. So for companies that only have one person that needs to keep things going, usually they tend to go to an external party, being a consultant or a lawyer, whoever they decide to go with. And usually what they will do is what it's called the 80-20 rule. The 20% of the parts that may trigger the either the 80% of the duties that you're going to pay or the 80% of the risk that you're going to pay. But internally, I'll say, you start slowly and then you start targeting at least, 10%, depending on how many goods you have, how many different type of parts you have and SKUs. And then just either take the 10% that are goods that are classified within the list of priorities for CBSA, for example, right? If you're doing the Canadian side of things, CBSA does release a list of priorities every year of what is it that they're auditing. So that would be a good way. You can just take the issues codes that they're reviewing there and just say, well, do we have a risk in here? And then you go through there. If it's now looking at tariffs and surtax, maybe just take the sample. Okay, what are the tariffs that are the parts that are triggering these surtax, these tariffs? How we had a look at those parts in a while, and then start going through your top priorities and reviewing those. So those will be the examples that I can give for tariff classification review.
That's awesome. What about Leslye? What about for a small company? Would it be worthwhile to partner with, say, a customs brokerage that can be like your outsourced compliance arm, like for this type of, tariff classification? Have you seen that
Yeah,
with small companies?
you have to find the right customs broker. There are small customs brokers that are really good, and then they provide that white glove service because they know their clients may not know and they're relying on to that. And they usually customs brokers may have either a custom brokerage side that takes care of that, or like a consulting side or department that takes care of that to provide further information. A lot of brokers are very hesitant when it comes to the classification. They don't want to take the liability, right? They don't want to take the risk, and the classification depends on the information and the right information. If you can provide the right and complete information to these external parties, be it brokers and consultants, then they can advise you in a good extent. But if you're not able to find as much information, then they may be just hesitant because they don't want to take that risk. They don't want to make assumptions. But yeah, a lot of companies do rely on their brokers to do that. What a lot of companies do too, based on my past lives, we had a consulting department within that company, and we had our custom brokerage clients, and then we will go and say, we just had an audit to this other client that it's in your field, that it's importing similar goods. Would you be interested? Because we believe it's just a matter of time. And so we'll proactively go and say, or if we had a ruling that it was to our client's favor, we will go and say, we just had a ruling that was released to our clients. We believe we can do a similar ruling for your goods, and you're going to be saving 15%, 18%. And so we will come and see what rulings come up at the CITT level in the US and in Canada, and we'll try to see if we can use rulings from the US in Canada and see if Canada has the same interpretation. And so we went for, like I did one for menstrual panties, when it went from 18% to free, because rather than being classified as panties, they were now classified as menstrual pads or napkins, right? And which was an item that didn't have the tariff, the duty in there. So you start using a broker, you start building that relationship, and they may come back to you with that opportunity as well.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. I feel like there's so much we could talk about, and I see the time, so we're at the the end of the Q&A. But before everyone leaves, Tiffany, our certification and membership coordinator, is just going to launch a quick survey. If everyone could please answer it. But I can't thank you enough for joining me today, Leslye. I feel like we could have just talked and talked and talked. You have so much so much great advice and so many stories and so much experience that you could share with organizations and individuals. So I thank you so much for supporting FITT and for telling us a little bit about what you do and how your FITTskills training has helped you in your past roles and your current role. And so thank you, Leslye. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And we will be sending the recording link for today, as well as the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation, so you could get that checklist. And I do encourage you to look at the risks, those internal risks for your organization, and really do reach out to me if you'd like to just talk about a customized corporate solution package. It could be a small team, it could be a large team, it could be a few individuals. Remember, it starts at 10 courses. So if there are 2 individuals that you've deemed that are your champions as you expand globally, I encourage you just to have a conversation with me, and we can put together a package to see what makes sense for your organization. So would love to chat with you. Thank you everyone for joining today.